The allure of growing my own spices has always captivated me. There is something truly special about grinding fresh peppercorns over a meal, knowing they came from your own garden. My journey with black pepper, or Piper nigrum, began with this simple desire. I envisioned beautiful, lush vines climbing gracefully in my greenhouse, adorned with heavy clusters of green drupes adorned with heavy clusters of red drupes. I wanted to experience the full life cycle of this king of spices, from a tiny seedling to the pungent, flavorful spice that graces our tables. The idea of self-sufficiency, even on this small scale, was incredibly inspiring. It was a challenge I was eager to embrace. My initial attempts, however, were modest. I acquired my first few black pepper plants with great excitement. I potted them in what I believed was good quality soil and placed them in a warm, bright spot. I followed the standard advice I found in gardening books. The plants grew, but they never truly thrived. The vines were thin and seemed to lack vigor. The leaves were a pale green, not the deep, glossy color I had hoped for. Each season I would wait with anticipation for the flowering spikes to appear, but they were few and far between. I would gather a handful of peppercorns, barely enough to fill a single grinder. While the flavor was undeniably superior to store-bought pepper, the quantity was a letdown. I knew these plants were capable of so much more. I had seen pictures of them in their native habitats, cascading down trees in dense, fruit-laden strands. My plants were a pale comparison. This gap between what I had and what I knew was possible fueled my determination. I decided to embark on a quest to unlock the secret to a truly abundant black pepper harvest. This journey was not just about growing more pepper. It was about understanding the plant on a deeper level. It was about listening to its needs and responding with the right care. I began to see it as a beautiful puzzle. The soil, the water, the light, the support. I was ready to experiment, to observe, and to learn from my mistakes. My goal was clear: to transform my struggling vines into the magnificent, productive plants I knew they could be. This was the beginning of my pepper project. My quest for a better harvest led me to question everything I thought I knew about growing black pepper. One of the biggest myths I encountered was that any standard, rich potting soil would suffice. Many sources simply recommended a well-draining, fertile mix, which is far too general for a plant with such specific needs. I learned that black pepper is not a typical houseplant. It is an understory vine that thrives in a very particular type of soil found in tropical forests. Standard mixes often become too compacted, suffocating the delicate root system, preventing proper moisture regulation. This was my first major breakthrough. Soil is not just a medium, but a habitat. Another common piece of advice I had to unlearn was related to watering. The prevailing wisdom was to keep the soil consistently moist. This vague instruction led me to water on a fixed schedule, which I now realize was a mistake. After years of mediocre results, the turning point came when I decided to stop treating my black pepper as a delicate houseplant. I began to see it as a wild vine that needed its natural environment to be simulated as closely as possible. This shift in perspective changed everything. I abandoned the one-size-fits-all approach and committed to creating a specialized system for my plants. My goal was no longer just to keep them alive, but to encourage them to grow with the same wild abandon they exhibit in their native South Asian forests. This new philosophy required more effort, but I was convinced it would yield the abundance I was seeking. The first step in my new approach was a complete overhaul of their living conditions. I decided to repot every single one of my plants, moving them from their standard pots into larger containers that would allow for a more complex and beneficial root environment. This was not just a simple transplanting. It was a chance to give them a fresh start with a soil composition I had spent months researching and developing. It was a labor-intensive day, but as I worked, I felt a renewed sense of optimism. The foundation of my success is, without a doubt, the soil. My secret is a custom-blended mix that really mimics a tropical forest floor. I stopped using any commercial potting soil as a base. I create a mix that's roughly 1/3 high-quality orchid bark, 1/3 coir, coconut fiber, 1/3 coarse perlite. To this base, I add a generous amount of compost and a handful of horticultural charcoal. The result is a wonderfully light, chunky medium. It holds moisture without becoming waterlogged. It provides plenty of air pockets for roots to breathe. That prevents the dreaded root rot. Container and technique are just as important as the soil. I use very large, deep pots. A larger pot gives stability for tall supports, and it gives roots ample room to expand. At the bottom, I place a 2-inch layer of coarse gravel, or leca, lightweight expanded clay aggregate. This ensures perfect drainage. When planting, don't bury the stem too deeply. The crown should sit just at the soil surface. That prevents stem rot and encourages healthy basal growth. Mastering the art of watering was, honestly, a game changer for my black pepper plants. I ended up throwing out the idea of a rigid schedule and instead learned to water based on the plant's actual needs. My method is simple. I water thoroughly only when the top 2 inches of my special soil mix feel dry to the touch. Because the mix is so airy, this is usually about once a week, but it can really vary with the season and humidity. When I do water, I make sure to do so deeply, allowing water to run freely from the drainage holes at the bottom of the pot. This ensures the entire root system is hydrated and also helps to flush out any accumulated salts from the soil. In addition to watering the soil, I also pay special attention to humidity. Black pepper vines thrive in a humid environment. To replicate this, I mist my plants every morning with fresh, clean water. This is especially important for the moss pole. I make sure to spray the pole thoroughly. A proper support system is not just an accessory for a black pepper vine. It is an essential component for vigorous growth and high yields. My earlier bamboo stakes failed. They didn't give the plant what it needs. I needed something that mimics tree bark, the plant's natural climbing surface. I built tall, sturdy poles wrapped in sphagnum moss. I also use coir liner. These materials retain moisture and give a textured surface aerial roots can grip and penetrate. Construction is straightforward. Start with a sturdy core, a thick bamboo pole or a piece of PVC pipe, at least 6 feet tall. Wrap a 1 to 2 inch layer of sphagnum moss, secure it tightly with fishing line or garden twine. Wrap evenly and densely. Insert the pole into the center of a large pot before adding soil. That keeps it stable so it won't topple as the vine grows. The visual transformation of my black pepper plants has been nothing short of astonishing. Before I implemented my new system, the vines were what I would describe as leggy. They had long, thin stems with leaves spaced far apart. The overall appearance was sparse and delicate. The leaves were often a pale green, sometimes with yellowing edges, signaling a lack of nutrients or improper watering. They produced very few aerial roots, and those that did appear were dry and withered. After just 1 growing season with the new method, the change was dramatic. The base of the vines thickened considerably, becoming woody and strong. From these robust main stems, a multitude of new shoots emerged, cloaking the moss poles in dense foliage. The leaves were now twice the size of the old ones, with a deep, glossy, emerald green color that radiated health. The entire plant looked vigorous and full of life. It was no longer a struggling vine but a lush, tropical garland, climbing with purpose and strength. There is really no reward in gardening quite like the one you can taste. After years of dedication, my patience was finally rewarded with an overwhelmingly abundant harvest. The sight of my black pepper vines draped in heavy strands of fruit was a dream come true. Green drupes, yellow drupes, red drupes. Harvesting them is a peaceful and satisfying ritual. I carefully snip the long spikes, collecting them in a large basket. The sheer weight of the basket is a testament to the success of the method. This is the abundance I had always envisioned, a harvest more than 7 times larger than anything my plants had produced before. It is a moment of pure gardening bliss. The process of preparing the peppercorns is just as rewarding as growing them. I blanch the green drupes in hot water for a few minutes, which cleans them and jump-starts the drying process. Then I spread them out on screens to dry in the sun for several days. As they dry, they shrink and wrinkle, turning into the familiar black peppercorns we all know. This is the true scent of pepper, a fragrance you can never find in a pre-ground spice jar.